Hey, what's up? My name's JM Chaley and welcome to my channel. This week I want to talk about what is known as the Tiffany problem. And if your name is Tiffany, this is not about you, I promise. What is the Tiffany problem? A lot of people have heard of this one, I think. It stems from the idea of anachronistic things in a medieval setting or a historical setting. Typically it's medieval, that aren't really anachronistic. They just appear to be, but they're not. And I'll give you an example. Name Tiffany. So the name Tiffany has existed since the Middle Ages. It's been used since the 1100s. And when we think of the name Tiffany now, it sounds modern, right? So it doesn't feel like an old name. It doesn't carry that, but the name Tiffany's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. But it feels like an anachronism. And what's an anachronism? It's something that feels out of time. It feels modern in an old setting, right? But that's the irony, is that Tiffany is not an anachronistic name. It just feels that way. There's other names too. Brad and Chad, for example, were around in the Middle Ages. but we tend to avoid them because they sound modern. There's other things like that in the Tiffany problem arena that have nothing to do with names, but these are more technology type stuff, setting type stuff that you might find in medieval. That's why when you read a lot of medieval books and watch a lot of medieval shows, even if they're fantasy shows like House of Dragon, Game of Thrones, that type of things, they don't put a lot of stuff in it that was kind of around in the Middle Ages. And I'm talking about things with science, technology, these things that existed. I did a video on medieval innovations. I'm going to link it up here. And it goes into all this kind of technology and science that existed from the age of antiquity, ancient times, all the way through the Middle Ages, that we kind of don't leverage in our fantasy fiction, which I think is kind of weird. But I understand why we don't, because it feels anachronistic. The Romans had hot and cold running water. Now, if you put that in a medieval setting, that might seem a little weird, right? In Pompeii, they had fast food, basically. You'd walk down the streets of Pompeii and there'd be all these pots cooking food with meat just kind of ready to go. This was an innovation of the necessity of living in a city where people would come up and they'd be like, "Hi, I'm hungry, I need food." And you couldn't afford to just say, "Okay, I'm going to go make you some food right now." They wanted to be able to sell a piece of food, off you go. Next person comes up, sell him a piece of food, off you go, boom, 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 right? You didn't have the seating capacity to sit and house 20 people. Sometimes this was like right off the street, right? So this stuff that we have today, this model of food, fast food, existed in ancient times. And we don't include it. We typically don't include it in our fantasy fiction because it feels anachronistic. So what do we do with the Tiffany problem? Well, there's a few ways we can go about dealing with it. The first way, of course, is we just avoid it. If it feels anachronistic, don't use it. Don't put it in your book, right? The other direction, though, is to pick and choose. Maybe some of it doesn't work, but some of it might kind of be cool. A little bit of research into what's going on out there. Maybe some of this might be an interesting inclusion. So maybe you don't name your character Tiffany. Okay, but maybe you include the fact that you had central heating in your house, or ice cream existed, or tonic water, or various types of medicines. I mentioned hot and cold running water. The ancient Greeks had a precursor to a steam turbine. It really didn't do a lot, but maybe in a fantasy setting, It could have been something a little bit more. Maybe it powered a small machine or something like that, and it was steam powered in a medieval setting. That would be kind of cool. Maybe you pick and choose the things that had sort of an appeal to them and could fit into your world and give a bit of fantasy and wonder without being overly anachronistic. And the third way to deal with the Tiffany problem is to lean completely into it and say, screw it. I'm going to use anything I want to. I'm going to name my characters Tiffany and Brad and Chad. And I'm going to put everything in there. Fast food, right? And I'm going to lean into it. I'm going to create a medieval McDonald's in my fantasy setting. And the beauty of it is it'll feel really anachronistic, but historically, it really kind of wouldn't be that anachronistic, because that's kind of what they had. They had pre-made foods ready to go off the shelf. You walk up, I want that, bam, you have it, and it's a ready-made thing. Just like a McDonald's. So those are kind of the three ways you could deal with the Tiffany problem or not. That's kind of the Tiffany problem in a nutshell. You decide how you want to handle it. If you're writing anything historical, particularly in a medieval fantasy fiction, and good luck with it. I'm curious to know if you've read something that feels anachronistic but maybe isn't anachronistic, or if you're struggling with the Tiffany problem yourself. Let me know in the comments. All right, so that about wraps it up. If you like this video, please smush that like button, and as always, please subscribe. I post most Thursdays, and you can follow me on social media. I'm most active on Threads and Facebook these days. And you can check out jmchaley.com for some cool book information, character art. You can leave me a message. Be sure to check out The Unlife of Lisa Cooper and The Vampires of 1863 for some cool vampire adventure action. And yes, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.